hello, First Baptist Church. It is April 1st. It's the beginning of a new month, so it is time for our Books of the Month. I think the original title was Book of the Month, but I can never choose just one. So I have two for you for this month, for the month of April. The first one is a book titled, What is Biblical Theology? Now, as many of you know, we've been kind of studying and looking through this idea of biblical theology, the whole storyline of the Bible. And the subtitle here is A Guide to the Bible's Story, Symbolism, and Patterns. It's a book by James Hamilton, who was a professor of mine in seminary, and so I read this a few years ago. It's really accessible. It's 115 pages. You could read it in a few days, in a day even, if you're at home during quarantine. You got hours on end, and like I said, it's a really accessible, really easy to get through, short chapters, just introductions to these topics. And so I want to read the table of contents here so that you can get a better idea of what to look forward to in this book. So there's some introductory chapters about asking and answering what is biblical theology, and then it's split into three parts, the whole book. The first part is the Bible's big story. So we're going to look at the narrative, the plot of the Bible, and then this idea of mystery. What's the mystery that's going to be revealed in Christ? And then part two is about the Bible's symbolism. It's called the Bible's symbolic universe. What do symbols do? Imagery, typology, and patterns. Now, this idea of typology, he devotes a little chapter to, about 10 pages. We're going to look at this a little bit further in, I think, not this study hour that's coming up, but the next one. Sometime next week, maybe I can get it in for Sunday. But this idea of typology and what are types in the Bible, and how do we use them to read and understand the story of the Bible? So that's a really good one that we'll get to even in our own study hour. And then part three, the Bible's love story, a song for the lady in waiting, the bride of Christ, and biblical theology. And then he devotes 3 chapters at the end of the book. I think it's 3. Yep, 3 short chapters about the church's identity in the story, the church's setting in the story, and then the church's plot tension and its resolution. So again, it's pretty short. Like I said, a little over 100 pages, can really give you a good overview of biblical theology. Again, the title, What is Biblical Theology, by James Hamilton. Pick it up. I think you can probably get it pretty cheap on Amazon. The second book I want to talk about, I just think it's a really timely reflection. It's a little bit longer, so it might take some more digging, some more time, and a little more fortitude to get through it. But it's called How Long, O Lord? And the subtitle, Reflections on Suffering and Evil. And like I said, in our time, with this coronavirus, COVID-19, and a lot of people having questions, is God real? If he's good, why does he allow these things to happen? Why does he allow sickness, disease? Again, I'll read the table of contents. Part 1, thinking about suffering and evil. So some first steps, some first things to think about when you approach the problem of evil. Part 2, parts of the puzzle, biblical themes for suffering people. There's a chapter on the price of sin, social evils, poverty, war, natural disasters, the suffering people of God, curses and holy wars, hell. And then there's a chapter, illness, death, bereavement. And then another a chapter that devotes to looking at all of these problems from the vantage point of the end. What happens in the end and how we look from there back to suffering and evil. And then finally he devotes an entire chapter to the book of Job, Mystery and Faith, he titles it. And then chapter 10 is the suffering God. So he looks at the suffering servant narrative, that of Christ who suffered on our behalf. And then part 3, glimpses of the whole puzzle, evil and suffering in the world of a good and sovereign God. So it looks at the mystery of providence, the comfort of providence, and learning to trust when things are crazy and things are unknowing. And then finally, chapter 13 is devoted to some pastoral reflections on suffering and evil, and that would probably be helpful for any believer, but especially for me. So it's a book by D.A. Carson. I think I forgot to mention his name a little bit ago, but D.A. Carson wrote this. Again, it's a little bit longer, a little over 200 pages, but really, really helpful. You can take it a chapter at a time, a chapter a week, and you'll get through it in maybe 2 months. But just a great introduction to the problem of evil and how the Bible teaches how to reconcile a good and gracious and perfect God who created this world but permits evil and suffering, and again, a good a balancing act between those two things, and really, really helpful. So especially in this weird time, I thought it was a good one to recommend to you. So this video will go out as soon as we can get it uploaded and processed. So we will see you soon. Happy reading, and we love you. See ya.